about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Do you have concerns about your personal information being exposed online? Information such as your home address, date of birth, voting preferences, and more readily available with one search. DataSeal is the comprehensive data removal service I trust. I use it. So use the link below to receive 5% off of your DataSeal subscription and protect your family. Alright, let's jump right into the content here. Today we are talking about the disappearance of 11-year-old Mark Himbaugh. As you know, I talked about it a couple videos ago. I read this book by Richard McHale, who is one of the investigating detectives on the scene. This book was given to me by a good friend of mine, Cassandra McCormick, who is a police officer as well, and she wanted me to look at it and give my opinion. Now, one of the things that people must know is sometimes books, depending on who they're written by, have a biased tendency towards them, meaning they have their mind made up, and as you read the book, it is trying to get you to go and see things in their narrative. Much like documentaries, I think of Making of a Murderer and others. It's very important to separate yourself from that and read a book. I mean, you can read it any way you want. I'm not telling you how, but I'm saying in an investigative standpoint, you want to read it with unbiased eyes and objectively. The same can be said for police reports. Sometimes police reports are written the same way. It's not just facts. It's things that lead you to believe what the person that's writing the report believes. So it's important to be able to distinguish while you're reading it. Hey, I can see he's trying to get me to go down this road. Let's stick to the facts. So in this case, I'm doing that. I read the book in order to get a good sense of the case because there isn't a lot online. There's a lot of missing persons flyers and stuff, but not a lot of substance behind it. Meaning, take the Keddy murders, for example. There's a lot of police reports that you can read, and that's what I like to read. This case doesn't have that. Yet it's an 11-year-old boy, a 6th grader, who just basically vanished. Now, there's a lot of cases like this in the United States, unfortunately, where young boys and girls go missing. It is the most heartbreaking of cases for parents because they never know. You know, in some aspects, it's better to have your child deceased. And I know that's heartbreaking to hear, but at least you know. When a kid goes missing, it goes back to man's greatest fear, which is fear of the unknown. And here, you don't know what happened to your child. And that is every parent's worst nightmare. Now, this case, there was a lot of, I could tell by reading it, it was done by a police officer or detective. Just the way it was written, the way it was broken down. A lot of victimology on the kid. The victimology may or may not play a part in this, but it's important to know. And in this case, 11-year-old Mark came from a household that was separated, meaning mom and dad had divorced approximately, or didn't divorce, but separated, moved out. Dad had moved out of the home 8 months previous to his disappearance. He had some behavioral problems in school, and that was annotated quite a bit in this book. Perfectionist, his mom would say. Like if he didn't draw a line correctly, he would crumple up the paper and even stab the paper. he had behavioral problems. He one time punched his mom in the eye, enough where she had to get medical attention at 11 years old. He was on Prozac. This was in 1991. So he seemed to have a normal IQ level in his standardized testing. But again, he seemed to have some behavioral issues, especially when it came to things not going his way. Now, will victimology play a part in this? I mean, it could, but let's look at the disappearance itself. Mark disappeared from a town called Delhaven, New Jersey. Now, I don't know a lot about this area, but apparently it's a beachfront community, but it doesn't mean that it's a wealthy status. It seems like they were just regular middle class, maybe somewhat lower class, but came from a nice neighborhood from what I gather. Now, my mind could certainly change on that if somebody from that area would contact me and say, no, it's a bad area. But on November 25th, 1991, Mark came home from school. And when he got home, I believe it was around 2:30 or so, he does the normal things, one would do. A normal boy. Nothing is out of the ordinary. Until 2:50. Okay, at 2:50, a brush fire starts. Some sort of fire in the woods, in a marshland type area. This is about, I want to say, a quarter mile from his house, but you could see it. Now, the problem I have with this book, not the problem that I have, but the thing is, I don't know a lot of what is fact and what is fiction. Now, I can take a guess because, for example, it says that it gives dialogue between Mark and his mom, or Mark and his brother, and that when this fire started, he went out back and climbed up. I don't know if that stuff is fact or if that is just fiction to create a book. You have facts in there, but then you throw in, dramatic liberties, creative liberty. And what that is you're making a story. Now, in the book, it says he goes and he's looking at this fire, and he asks his mom whether he can go because it's starting to draw a crowd. People are seeing the smoke. And, for some reason, again, it's in the early 90s when kids were allowed to do these things, where they would ride bike to your neighbor's house. I mean, that was your source of entertainment. You lived in a neighborhood. You walk all you want. It's different now. But back then, that's what they did. And she said, okay. But a neighbor had come to their house, a female, and said that she needed a ride somewhere. And could Mark's mom give her a ride? She said, sure. So now you have Mark going to look at this brush fire at, we'll say 3:15-ish. And mom going to take the neighbor on a short errand. Mom last sees Mark at 3:15 p.m. At 3:30, he's observed talking to two men. A witness sees him talking to two men in a car. Pretty good description of the car. It said it had temp tags on it. And they even give a great sketch of one of the individuals, as you can see here. At 4 o'clock, he's still out walking around. But at 4 o'clock, a maintenance man of some sort for the park area sees him, quote unquote, playing, and I don't know what playing means at age 11, what they were doing, but he sees her with a female of his age, 10, 11 years old, whatever, enough that he creates a sketch of her as well. So those, when a sketch is created, usually, and I'm going to say usually, it's because that a person believes that they saw that. So Mark is playing with this female who is his age, and this is at 4 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, he hasn't come home yet, and it's starting to get dark. So Mom reports him missing. She went out and looked for him, couldn't find him. You know, he knew he wouldn't go far. Reports him missing. I'm good with all this. That's quick. That's a quick, you know, hey, that sounds like a good, caring mother. Hey, I'm supposed to be here. He's not here. I'm not wasting any time reporting him missing. The search is on, and the search intensifies. I mean, eventually the Coast Guard, they got helicopters, everybody looking for this kid. At 9 o'clock, so he was last seen by a witness at 4 o'clock, so 5 hours later, on the beach, which is 75 yards north of his house, searchers find a shoe, just one, in the sand on this beachfront. They identify the shoe as his shoe. Mom identifies it. Brother identifies it because brother says, it was an older brother. He says, I gave those shoes to Mark. I know it. And they're pretty distinct because they had different shoelaces. Red shoelaces and then white shoelaces. There's no mistaking that that was his shoe. Now, what is a major importance, and to me, the shoe and the footprints are the crux of this case. It's the only evidence that we have right now. They can see footprints in the sand. 2 footprints of somebody wearing a shoe. And then they see where Mark's shoe is off and laying in the sand, but the footprints continue with a shoe on, barefoot. Shoe on, barefoot. The footprints eventually dry up, whether you run out of sand and or whatnot. But they bring the tracking dogs in, and the dogs follow the footprints, and they got a good scent. They keep going when the footprints even disappear, and it falls to a macadam road, and then the dogs lose the scent. Now, what is important is what is behind those prints, right? What's your first initial thought? Okay, maybe he's being chased and he stepped out of his shoe. Well, okay, wouldn't there be prints of whoever chasing him behind him in the sand? We don't see that here. Of note is Mark was recovering from a fractured foot. Now, what foot do you think that would be? If his left shoe was found in the sand. His left foot. So initially, you know, I'm reading and I'm thinking, oh, his foot was bothering him. He's recovering from a fractured foot. It's his left foot. He takes his shoe off. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Why would he leave it there? So that's the clues that we have. That's it. Now, a couple, I want to say maybe days, weeks later, a couple comes forward and says, hey, we were on that beach on Sunday before the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles play. We were taking our dog for a walk. We saw that shoe there Sunday. 100% sure. We commented about it. Mark went missing Monday. They found that shoe Monday night. This couple was saying, hey, we saw that shoe there 24 hours earlier. Without a doubt. Now, how can that be? Ponder that. Now, we will fast forward to February of 1993. A male prostitute comes forward to police and says, hey, I was with a client who was showing me a homemade videotape, and the tape was of Mark Himbaugh being SA'd. And you know what that means. Had a ball gag in his mouth. I asked the client, whose name is, I believe, Tommy Butt Cabbage, appropriate name, hey, that looks like Mark Himbaugh. And he says, yeah, it is. He said the film was taken after he was abducted. He offered him a job to help him abduct boys. He says, sometimes I go as far as 100 miles away. And this male prostitute is from Philadelphia. So, and this is where the encounter with Tommy Butt Cabbage, funny saying that name, and the male prostitute occurred, not far from Jersey. The prostitute, I don't know whether he has charges, why he came forward. There's got to be a reason why, and I didn't read that in the book. Yet Tommy is in jail currently. He's been arrested for everything child related that you can think of. Now, when I look at the sketch of the two men that were seen talking to Mark in a car, the sketch provided looks an awful lot like Tommy, right? As you can see. Now, in this book, it goes on to, remember I said it tries to kind of paint a narrative. And maybe not, maybe it's just showing facts, but again, I don't know. Because there's a section in here where Mark had a girlfriend. Okay? Yeah. At age 11. And there was a chapter in the book where Mark and his girlfriend were being assaulted by Mark's dad and dad's friends. And it was being videotaped. Mark was going to gather evidence, names and stuff, and go to police, tell an adult what happened. The girlfriend begged him not to do it, saying they'll kill us. Next thing you know, he disappears. I think that part is fiction, but I don't know. You know, it doesn't say so in there. It seems like that was just filler for the book to tell the story or the narrative that the author wanted to do. If it's true, it would have obviously had to have come from the girlfriend. But I didn't read that anywhere in there other than what seemed to be a fictional account of that. And maybe that was just the author's way of giving his version of what he believes happened. Now, in any investigation, you want to look 24, 48 hours previous. Did anything unusual happen in the victim's life? Now, sometimes it's going to be completely coincidental. Okay? Remember I gave an analogy before of I was out cutting my grass with my riding mower and I hit my basement door with the front of the tractor and it like busted the frame of my door. And I was irritated, but I got out, took the frame, put it on the floor there and continued going on cutting my grass. And I thought to myself, because this is how I think, what if I got murdered tonight? And police were called. They're going to be looking around the house and they're going to see that and they're going to say, oh, there's forced entry. When in fact, there's a completely logical explanation for it. I digress. The point being is, there was something unusual construed by the mother of Mark. She said that Mark did not like going to visit his father. Now, that's coming from the words of a mother who obviously has something against the father. Okay? So sometimes you can't just go off of that. Because I guarantee the dad's going to say, yeah, I have no problem with him. Or whatever it is. You have to find that middle ground. You have to find an unbiased eye who knows. Sometimes you won't find that. But that's what you got to try to do. Mom says, hey, the last time Mark went to Dad's, Dad dropped him off, got his clothes out of the back, his duffel bag, whatever it was. And I observed from the house, Dad give him a big hug. And I thought that was odd. When asked why, well, because he's not affectionate towards Mark. And in fact, he likes Mark's brother better. So I thought it was odd. She says, I took it as a I will never see you again hug. Now that's a big leap. Okay? Now she's entitled to how she feels, certainly. But I just think that it's a big leap. We have no idea. He said something to the fact is it'll be okay. It could simply be that, hey, he's talking about the separation. Hey, it's going to be okay. Doesn't mean it has to be nefarious in intent. Right? Doesn't mean, hey, you're getting ready to be abducted. I'm a part of it. Therefore, I'll see you. I'll never see you again. Here's a hug. I mean, that's a big leap for me. It's possible. I just don't know if it's probable. Now, the consensus from the book is that Mark's father was a pedophile. Yet I saw no proof of it. Dad's oldest son, Matthew, I believe was his name, Mark's older brother, had a girlfriend who was, 14? Maybe she was 12. And it seemed like the dad was paying a lot of attention to her, rubbing her back. He made people feel uneasy. But from the book, he also did that with female adults. You know, on the night that, according to the book, and the night Mark disappeared, a family friend came to give him a hug, and he reached his hand up the front of her shirt and felt her breast. Odd behavior, you know. Nieces of his alleged that he was too friendly. He didn't go as far as saying that, you know, an assault occurred. Just that he was overly friendly. I don't know what the dad's criminal history is. He may not have none. But the book certainly points him as a pedophile. And it also points him to being involved in this abduction. Now, I won't go there. I don't have enough information. You know, they have a lot more information than I do. But an unbiased eye looking in, this is something that I see. Number one, let's go back to the shoe. It's our only piece of evidence that we have, right? You have to determine, if you can, how the shoe got where it is and why. Now remember I said, well, he had a fractured foot, so maybe it was bothering him, he took it off. We can debunk that because he wouldn't leave his shoe there. He was getting chased by somebody, right? He runs out of his shoe. Well, we can debunk that, right? Because there's no footprints following him. Now you can have some crazy people that are going to say, well, it was a big bird, big pterodactyl coming down, chasing him, and he's running. Well, for the people that believe in that, I like that theory. For the people that believe in that, hence, no footprints following him. But the sane people in this world, we can rule that out. And let's get to now how that can be. What would cause an 11-year-old boy who was 75 yards from his home during daylight hours? Remember, it's not going to get dark until about 5. Last seen at 3:15 by his mom. Last seen 4 o'clock talking to a girl. So between, well, I was going to say between 4 and 5 is the probable time that he was abducted. But if his shoe wasn't found until 9 p.m. that night, I mean, to be safe, you would have to say between 4 and 9 p.m. But I think we can narrow that between 4 and 5. I really do. So what would cause him to not take his shoe? Well, I think it is pretty obvious what occurred, at least in my opinion. And again, this could change based off of different facts that I am presented, but from what I see, first of all, they made a sketch of this little girl that was with him at 4 o'clock. It's a small town there. Small development. You think she's ever been identified? No. There's only 2 reasons why she wasn't identified. One, it didn't happen. The park ranger, the maintenance man, whoever he is that witnessed it is wrong. You only would know that by talking to that individual. How do you know it was Mark that you saw? How do you know that? And according to the book, he's seen him all the time. He's seen him all the time in that area. And Mark, being freckled, pale-skinned redhead that he is, leads me to believe he doesn't look like other people. You know what I mean? Stands out a little bit. There's a distinction when you have red hair and freckles and pale skin. So I believe that witness probably is right. He did see him with another girl. Now, who is the girl? So now that we established that out of the 2 possible scenarios, one, he knew Mark and did see him with a girl. I'm holding up my middle finger, I'm sorry. The second scenario is that it's an accomplice. Now, accomplice to what? We're going to dive into something that I am not very familiar with, but it is something I've been meaning to brush up on a lot more, and that is human trafficking. I know enough about it to say these despicable, soulless, sociopath people will use other abducted children to get their targets. And in this case, Mark Himbaugh. So, what I see happening, potentially, is that the 2 males that were seen in the car talking to Mark at 3:30 were his abductors. Now, where does the little girl come into play? She was in the back seat, maybe. The witness couldn't see her. Or she was already out in the ground, walking around, looking for a potential person. Maybe he was targeted already, or maybe it was just a random scenario, which I believe is more likely. So what these dick slaps will do is put the girl out there, put the boy out there, and hey, go get him. Tell him to come back into the car. We'll get him around. Whatever you got to do to get him in the car, that is what you do. And if you don't do that, we're going to kill you and we're going to kill your family. Plain and simple. The girl who has been probably traumatized, broken, brainwashed, has Stockholm Syndrome, is going to do their wishes. That's the only way that this sketch could not be recognized of the girl. People in that town would know who that little girl was, yet nobody knows. Now that leads us back to the footprints in the sand. Doesn't it seem likely to me that this girl approached Mark as he's walking? She says, hey, you got to come with us, blah, blah, blah. He says, no. No. The abductors say, oh, well, we're going to get him anyhow. Everybody is occupied with this little brush fire over here. Fire trucks, there's everybody over here paying attention to that. We're just going to scoop them. So they roll up on them. On the pavement, on the macadam before the beach. Open up the door. Hey, we say get in. Get him. Or whatever it is. He's freaked. There's nobody chasing him. But they threatened him. The little girl, he already knows something's up. The girl is telling him, or whatever she did. Who knows what she told him, but he knows something's up. He sees the car again. This is the second time. They talked to him at 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock, 4:15, whatever it is. He sees the car up there again, and now it's like following him. She failed in getting him in the car. They open up the car door. He sees it. He knows. This isn't good. I'm out of here. And he runs. And he runs on that beach. And his shoe comes off. Why? Because it's on his left fractured foot that's healing. And he probably has the shoelaces a little bit looser than the right foot. He runs out of that shoe. And then you see the prints continue on. One shoe, no shoe. One shoe, no shoe, until the macadam, where they drive up and take him. They catch him. They didn't chase him physically on the beach. That's why you don't see any footprints. But he ran because he's scared. That's the only reason that I can think of that he would leave his shoe there. He's running from something and he's scared. Now the shoe was not waterlogged, so it's not like he drowned in the water and his shoe got washed back up on the beach. Although, you have to consider the possibility of a large body of water there and a kid, but the evidence doesn't show that. It just shows one shoe. Now let's get to another explanation for the shoe that was brought up by Tommy Butt Cabbage. He tells the male prostitute that, yes, in fact, the video that they were watching is of Mark. And there was more than one person involved because Tommy was assaulting Mark, but there was somebody operating the camera. He questions Tommy about the shoe, saying that's the only thing they found of that kid. And Tommy allegedly said, I planted the shoe there to throw off police. Now, I think, in my opinion, you could just totally disregard that as a complete and utter lie. First of all, why is there no other prints there? Why isn't his shoe prints there if he planted it? Now, somebody could say, well, he could have thrown the shoe from the macadam. But why? Wouldn't that lead more to the possibility of an abduction than no shoe being there? If you have no shoes there, you could possibly think the kid drowned. I think it's an asinine statement, and I don't know whether the prostitute informant made that up, or if he really did hear it from Tommy, whether he made that up. Because planning a shoe makes 0 sense for an abduction. 0 cents. If you have to choose between, okay, what is more probable in an abduction? Okay? A kid running because he's freaking scared and he runs out of his shoe, or the offender who's already abducted the kid saying, let's go back and plant a shoe. Makes 0 sense. And because of that, I don't know whether to believe the prostitute who came forward with this information. Yet, because of the background of Tommy, his current charges, him currently being in jail, thank God, the sketch, and Mark being so recognizable because of his look, it makes me believe that the prostitute did see the video of Tommy assaulting him. Now, they had something called the Mark Himbaugh Task Force. Now, the task force that I've been a part of usually consists of local police, federal marshals, FBI, things like that. Take a couple from each group, put them together. It's nothing, you're going to work on nothing else other than this disappearance. According to the book, there must have been some credibility to the prostitute, because they were able to get a search warrant. You can't just go based off of what he's saying and go search somebody's house. You have to go in front of a judge, and you have to have probable cause to believe what you are looking for. And in this case, it's a videotape. And anything else that may link Tommy Butt Cabbage to Mark's disappearance. And they did a search warrant, and they found some drug paraphernalia, I believe. They found child pornography, but they did not find the tape of Mark Himbaugh being assaulted. Now, that could be because this was a high-profile case, and the prostitute thought he was going to get something out of it. Charges dropped, whatever it was. That tape may have never existed. That is a possibility that you have to come to grips with. Or Tommy could have got rid of it. But if he was assaulting kids and hiring people to go and abduct kids with him and stuff like that, wouldn't there be other tapes there? Not just Mark's. And I don't think that they found those. So I guess I'm struggling with the fact that this, dick cheese called Mark Butt Cabbage is involved. He may be, and apparently he is, a sick scumbag individual. And he is where he needs to be. Yet, you can't blame him for something when there's no evidence of it, right? You just can't. That would be like, let's say, the missing person case of Brenda Condon. She went missing out of State College, or Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, I believe, in 1991. Missing. That's like just saying, hey, Ted Bundy took her. He was in the area. Oh, that's an example. Ted Bundy was in jail at the time, but he might have even been dead at the time. But I'm just saying, you can't just say that. Okay? You have to have evidence. You have a prostitute that says he saw a tape, identified Mark being assaulted in that tape by his client, Tommy. Now, Tommy allegedly says, yes, it is Mark in that, and that was taken after he was abducted. And then you take in consideration Tommy's background, proclivity to do this to kids. And there you have what is called circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is like there's a bank robbery. You pull up on the scene and you see a guy running. And you stop him. Take his ID. That's circumstantial evidence. That's not physical evidence that he robbed the bank. Now you get into his pocket and you find $10,000. Well, okay. Now you're getting direct evidence. Although he's saying, hey, that $10,000 is I just sold a car. So you don't have any direct evidence. But then you go to the bank and you see him on camera and you have a witness who says, yes, he just robbed this. And guess what? He took $10,000. That's direct evidence. So in this case, there is no direct evidence pointing to Tommy as being involved. And in fact, I will go even further to say there is no direct evidence to say that Mark's father was involved. Mark's father seems, from this book, and I have no reason to doubt that anything in this is inaccurate. If anything, I would say maybe parts are embellished, meaning it's the author's opinion. But I am pretty sure that everything in there is factual. And Mark's father seems to be, not the best. They make a big deal about him only being there for an hour or so during the search party. Then he left. And when they confronted him with that, he's like, hey, I felt uncomfortable there. It was all my ex-wife or separated wife's family who don't like me. I'm not doing anything, just standing around there, so I left. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's indicative of guilt. I disagree with that. Everybody handles grief, trauma, situations differently. You can't base guilt or innocence off of that. Now, what you can do is chalk it up and say, okay, well, there's one thing. And then once you get the totality of everything, well, then that's different. There's a lot of fathers out there, a lot of dads, a lot of sperm donors who are horrible fathers, don't care for their kids, beat their kids, don't encourage their kids, whatever it is. They're not all murderers. They're not all planning to have their kid abducted and sold into sex trade. No, I bet you there have been. No doubt. But one of the things that you have to look at is something like the time of day when this happened. The brush fire. I considered initially, hey, is it possible that a brush fire was set intentionally to lead attention that way so you can abduct a kid off of the street? Sure, but how do you know that kid's going to be on the street? In addition, they had roads closed, forcing, slow-moving traffic during... That is not conducive to an abductor trying to get out of a fleeing area with a kidnapped kid, right? When you have roadblocks set up and you have one-lane traffic, you have fire police there, you have eyes that might be looking in your slow-moving car going by. See, these are all things that you must consider when looking at a case like this. It's the little things. It's thinking outside the box, but not going 100 miles outside the box. You know what I mean? You stick to the facts. Going 100 miles outside the box is like the pterodactyl chasing him, or a supernatural force. That's crazy land. You know? We don't go there. We stick to the facts, think outside the box, but not way outside the box. So at 4 p.m., it's still daylight, right? What kind of offender would do something like this? What would you be looking for? Well, you're obviously looking at somebody that probably doesn't have a job, or is on their day off, or since it is close to Thanksgiving, it's possible that they are home on Thanksgiving break. You certainly, and I'm sure the police looked for any sexual offenders within probably, a good 25-mile radius. I have a hard time believing his dad is involved. I would have to see further evidence to support that. Just because he's a bad guy, just because he's a bad dad, because he has proclivity to younger females, doesn't mean he's selling his boy into sex trafficking. That's a big leap for me. Not saying it's not possible, it is. But it's still a big leap. I think Butt Cabbage is a good candidate. He's a good person of interest. He's a good suspect. Person of interest and a suspect to me are the same thing. It's just different terminology. They try to make it that, a person of interest is lower than a suspect. No, they're a suspect. If they're a person of interest, they're a suspect, in my eyes. He matches the sketch, but see, the thing with sketches are, everybody can match them. A D.B. Cooper sketch, everybody matches it. Sketches are, you can make anything fit. Billy the Kid sketch matches, or not Billy the Kid, but that's facial recognition, I'm thinking. Zodiac sketch. Looks like Ross Sullivan. Looks like, Arthur Lee Allen. You can't but this sketch, when they have distinct features, like long hair and glasses, then, hey, at least it eliminates people with short hair, right? And you look at Butt Cabbage, and it certainly looks like him. But there's no evidence. I keep going back to that because I'm an evidence-based investigator. I like circumstantial evidence. And when there's a ton of it, I will go down that route. But when there's just, hey, sketch resembles him and he has a background of it, okay. Give me a gas receipt that puts him in the area. Now I'm interested. See what I'm saying? It's got to be a totality of things, unless there is direct physical evidence, meaning they processed the shoe and Butt Cabbage's semen DNA is on the shoe. I'm just making that up, but you know what okay. Now we have direct physical evidence. I keep just going back to those footprints. The kid had to have been scared to keep running with one shoe on. Well, we don't know he was running, right? Apparently they can't tell by the footprints whether he was running or walking. I'm going to say he's running. Because if he's just walking, or maybe he's not running, maybe he's walking at a very fast pace and the shoe comes off. You stop and put that shoe back on. Or grab it. If everything is kosher. If you're going back home, whatever it is, you take the shoe with you. You don't leave it there. The only reason you leave it there is if you are scared. Scared to stop for a second to pick it up. Which means you're either running or you're walking at a very fast pace because something has scared you. That's the only reason. And at least we have that much evidence. In some cases, kids just disappear and there is no evidence at all. And here we have a sighting of a car with 2 people in it with a sketch of a girl, a mystery girl who's his age. You have his shoe, you have the prints, you have the dogs, bloodhounds following the scent to the macadam, and then it disappears. I think it paints a picture. It paints a picture of him thwarting an abduction in the beginning with the girl trying to convince him, coax him, whatever it is. Something else scared him enough that he is down on the beach, walking fast or running, comes out of that shoe. He's so scared that he keeps going. And he goes to the macadam, and they lose his scent. Why? Because he's thrown into a car and he's taken. By who? That is the question. Make no mistake, it's for nefarious reasons. I'm still not sold on. I'm not sold on the dad being involved, and I'm not sold on the prostitute's story. Both could be possible, yes, but I'm not sold on it. Because I would think that they would have found that tape during the search warrant. He could have confessed, but he could have been doing it as a bragging thing. I've seen that hundreds of times. People will brag about stuff when they have nothing to do with it. Okay? That's it. I don't want to keep repeating myself. What an interesting case. Wish there was more that I could do on that. But getting this out there and giving, some insight on it maybe will help somebody. And I think what needs to be done is somebody needs to contact Mr. Butt Cabbage at the prison that he's at. Write him a letter. Find out what's going on. I don't know. He's probably going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sure police went and talked to him. And he's denying everything. And maybe for good reason. Maybe not. Well, he's an inmate. So, all right, that's it for this sad, sad story of Mark Himbaugh. My heart goes out to his family members, brother, mom, dad, family, friends. And if you have more information on this, and if you are scared to go to the police, send me an email. I'll read it. I'll take corrective action. That's what I do. So with that said, Mains out.